Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the next steps and take everything you've learned to a higher level. You need to know how to build customized features for your app, but that's a lot easier said than done, especially when they go beyond your level of knowledge at that point. And maybe you've looked for tutorials or help in the forum, but haven't been able to get the answers. Maybe there aren't templates that'll help you gain a grasp of how the features could be built out. Maybe you've thought about just hiring out a developer for a few specific features, but don't want to spend the hundreds or thousands of dollars it might cost. We're going to talk about how to handle those tricky moments. To start us out, I want to show you some examples of what I mean. It's a marketplace type app that connects online merchants and developers who work on a specific e-commerce framework called Magento. Now, it's okay if you don't understand what that means, because that's the point I'm going to be getting at. This app is incredibly unique and specific. It's certainly not a clone or template type app, and took a lot of concentrated effort to build it out, as well as some high-level strategizing on the features. You can see this app has features like a two-sided interface, which includes both individuals and companies. It also holds data for events and job openings. There are listings for specialists, and there's even a feature where users can post blogs, articles, news, and stories. You can see how many unique features the app has, and it's actually just in its beta phase right now and welcoming its initial users on board before continuing to build out even further. And actually, this entire app was originally built on a different platform that didn't suit its needs. The entire app was rebuilt on Bubble, and the existing users it had at the time came right along with it. Now, the base of this app was built using the strategy we've already gone over. But obviously, features like these aren't going to be straightforward and easy to build. The app as a whole has a big database, and adding each new feature took a high level of analysis and brainstorming on how to move forward. All that might seem like a lot, but my purpose in showing you this isn't to overwhelm you, especially considering I know you have some pretty unique features in mind for your own app. Instead, I want to show you what's possible. You can build features just like this client has and evolve your app into a full-blown solution for a business or market. You don't have to be a Bubble whiz to do all this, but you do need to have the right perspective. One of the running themes of these videos is that you have to know the right way to approach development, because it doesn't matter how well you do or don't know Bubble. If you don't move through development with a strategic and logical plan that works with Bubble, you're going to struggle. I'll stress over and over again how you need to follow a strategic set of steps when building your app. And that remains true whether you're building a simple app with just a couple features, or if you're building a full-blown marketplace like the one we just looked at. So let's talk about some of the most important rules you need to know when it comes to building customized features on Bubble. The ones we're talking about are features that'll help grow, scale, and expand the core of your app. The first rule to know is the tools available to you in Bubble often have more than one use. Now, you might be wondering why that's important, but knowing this will unlock endless possibilities for you when using Bubble. I want to show you what I'm talking about here, so we're going to take a look inside an app. There are many elements and properties of elements that have multiple uses. I'm going to take you through some of them now. One of the first ones that isn't so obvious to users is that most of these visual elements are clickable. And what I mean by that is that you can click on them to trigger a workflow. Usually, Bubble beginners think that the button is the only clickable element. But in fact, most of these can do the same thing. They can also create workflows. So if I add a text element to my page here, you can see that in the property editor, I do have the option to start and edit a workflow. So when I click on that to begin a new workflow, Bubble accepts the text element as a workflow event where when the text is clicked, we can run any action. So it doesn't have to be a button. You can click on an icon, on an image. There are some elements that don't work like this. For example, the video element, that's more of a video player. So, when you click on that, it's really just to start and stop the video. And the map is also another special case where it has its own clicking properties. So you can click on a map marker to run a workflow. And also the link element has special clicking properties as well. I'm going to add a link element to my page now to show you what I mean. This is another element where there are multiple ways to use a link. So I can type in a label for my link, for example, open invoice, okay? And I can set this link element up to open up a PDF of some billing invoice. And I just have to tell Bubble where that link is, where that URL to that file is. So let's say it's an external URL and I have it hosted in my Dropbox or my Google Drive. So I can insert a URL there. Maybe I have those URLs saved to my database. I can insert dynamic data to pull them in there. That way, when the user clicks on this link, they're taken to that file. And this link element also gives us the option to open that file in a separate tab in our browser window. So it would do something like that, where it would open in a separate tab. And if you remove the style for the link element, you can see that there's an extra option here where you can show an icon instead of a text. So I can choose maybe an image of, a common link icon here like this. That might change my design a little bit when I want to present this link to the user. I really encourage all of my students to get in the habit of removing the bubble applied style so that they can expose all of the properties within the property editor. There's usually a lot more hiding behind those styles that you might not be aware of that would really allow you to customize things further. A really good example of this is the map element. So I'm going to add this to my page. And you can see that when I add it, Bubble has applied its standard map style. Within this standard map style, I'm still able to change what the markers are. I can add in the addresses. I can check whether I want to allow zooming and dragging. I can disable zooming on scroll. I can set, how zoomed in I want the map to be. So if I choose 1, it's, zoomed all the way out. And I have control over those. But now if I remove the style, I get a few more options. I get these map type and style drop downs that become available. So this is actually where I can show, a satellite view with Google Maps. Let me zoom in a little bit more over here so we can see, the Google Earth type of view. And I can also change the map style, which is a series of designs and themes that Google has for its maps. So let me go back to the regular roadmap here and you'll see what I mean. If I change this to flat green, it really changes the look of that, or to a neutral blue. It's a little darker there. But Bubble's preset style hid these things. And if you weren't aware of these properties, you might have never known that you could customize these elements further. This is something that I try to let all my students know. Undo the styles so that you can see all of the options that are available to you. Now, another element that I want to demonstrate here that has multiple use cases is the group element. So this not only, has its own special properties, but it also serves different purposes. So for example, I've added this group to the page. I'm going to give it a different background color here so that we can see it a little better. Let's do this light purpley blue type of color there. Okay, and the obvious use for this group is simply to group elements together, to move them as one unit when you're, designing the page. So I could add a text element here and an icon, as well as a button down at the bottom. Okay, so now if I grab my group, you can see that they all move together. That's fine. That's very straightforward. A group groups things together. But what the group can also do is act as a data source for some record in your database. In other words, you can have it reference, kind of like a shortcut, to a specific record in your database. So take a look at this. I'm going to move this group over here, and I'm going to create a list of users from my entire database right next to it. Okay, so this list is going to be a list of users, and the source of my list will be a search of, I'm going to do a search for all users in my database, so this will return all of my users. If you remember in an earlier video, I went through this repeating group setup with the list of tasks for that project management app. So this is the same. I'm just displaying a list of users from my database, and I can have a text inside this cell to display the current cell's user and their email address. And then I can have a button inside the cell to say view user details. Okay, so now this group, what I want it to do is display the details of the user that I selected from this list. If I click on the button, I want the text element inside this group to change. So if I have user A, B, C, and D, when I click on user A's button, this will give me user A's name, for example. If I click on user B's button, this will change to user B's name, right? But I only want it to happen within one group. I don't want to create, 1, 5, 10, an unknown number of groups. I want this group to be dynamic and reference dynamically some user's record. So to do that, all I need to say is, hey Bubble, let's make this group a data source. So I'll tell Bubble that the group should reference some user. This is the type of data. And then the data source can be set in a couple different ways, actually. You could create a default data source here by doing a search of your database and say, go find this one specific user. You can also change the source dynamically with a workflow. So if I click on this button, I can create a workflow to change the data source of the group. So to do that, I'll go to the element actions and display data. This is essentially saying change the data source of a group. So I have to tell Bubble exactly what I want to do. For the group, I want to display the current cell's user. So what this is doing is when I click on that button in the repeating group cell, it's going to pass that user's data to the group. Now the group is a shortcut to that one user that was selected. And the text inside of the group can reference that past user and display any of the fields we want it to display. So for example, I'm going to insert dynamic data here, and I want it to display the parent group's user, the parent group referring to the purple group here, right? Because the group is the parent of the text, whereas the text is the child element of the group. So we'll say parent group's user's first name, right? So when I click on this, it will pass this cell's user data to the group, and we'll see that user's first name. If I click on another cell, it will pass that user, and the name will change. So this is a really powerful way to have a group act as a shortcut to some record in our database. And this is because we can change the data source for this container element, this group element. So not only is it, a literal grouping of elements, but it's also a powerful database element. Those are just a few examples of how there are tools and elements and properties in Bubble that really can be multifunctional and serve your app in many different ways, and how you take advantage of those things really depends on what you're building. But as long as you know that you have many, many options, it's really up to you to customize. Just be aware that there are often hidden properties to check. You have to undo the styles to make sure that you're seeing all of the properties available to you, and really understand how each of the elements work. The group element can be really obvious and straightforward as a container of other elements, but without knowing the fact that this can act as a shortcut to your database, you're really missing out on powerful functionality opportunities there. Understanding that is going to be a game changer when building your app. Now, because there are so many possibilities with this, we can't go through them all. But by knowing this, you'll now be aware of what to look for when building features and will be able to better utilize the tools you already have access to.